It's Friday. A Health Friday conversation happens. And our Health Friday conversation today is going to be about diabetes and hypertension. We'll soon be joined by Duncun Motanya, who's the chair of the Diabetes and Hypertension Management Foundation. Mombi, amefika wapi? Amekuja? Okay, so he'll be joining us into the studio shortly. And as he does that, then we'll talk about hypertension. Why do those two go hand in hand, City?
They don't necessarily go hand in hand.
They don't?
Not necessarily, but they are closely associated because of certain factors. One, age. Two, lifestyle. Three, disposition that is probably out of family heritage.
Okay.
Yes. So your predisposition sometimes is a result of the fact that your father, your grandparents had it. Then lifestyle.
So you're predisposed to...
Simply because of the genetic makeup and the genetic inheritance. Then your lifestyle, sedentary, what you eat, what you don't eat, and how much of it you eat, or how much of it you don't drink and drink. Yes.
So that also has an impact.
It does.
Your lifestyle.
Yes. Oh, it has a very, very big impact.
Because you hear all the professionals, health professionals and all telling you, don't have a sedentary lifestyle because it could lead up to having an issue and an effect on your health.
Yes. Not.
And all of those directly getting you predisposed to hypertension and diabetes.
Yes.
What do we call diabetes in Kiswahili? Kisukari.
No.
Is it not?
No. It has a name. It slipped my mind. I ought to know because I'm diabetic.
It cannot be kifaduro.
Today you're just making up stuff, man.
There's an ugonjwa called kifaduro. Google.
Kifa what?
Just Google it. Just Google it. Yeah. Duncun Motanya is the chairman of the Diabetes and Hypertension Management Foundation. He's our guest this morning. Duncun, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Thank you very much for joining us in the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Du.
Good morning.
Good morning. And City.
Yes, sir.
It's actually Kisukari.
Naambia hawa jamaa wanielewi bwana.
Unasema sukari bwana.
Kisukari.
Bana bwana, unasema sukari wewe.
Sugar sukari. And what is hypertension in the Kiswahili?
Okay. That one I think
City. Yes.
What is hypertension?
I'm not certain, but I will find out. It is kisukari, absolutely, but we'll find it as we move along.
Hypertension?
Yes.
Sawa. Okay. To welcome you to this conversation.
Pressure.
Yeah? It's pressure.
For real. P-R-E-S-H-A, pressure.
It's pressure. City, the day's proverb.
Na hii haina pressure. It is easy to pull a thorn out of someone else's skin.
It is easy to pull a thorn out of someone else's skin.
Yes.
Duncan, what's your interpretation of this proverb?
Earlier on, I think 6 o'clock, and many of us said, I think the thorn was quite a bit ambiguous, but it's straightforward. And especially and with the people in our community, you sometimes have to deal with you're managing your sugar. You have to deal with making sure you eat the right diet. So sometimes people who are closer to you would sort of like think that it's easy. So it's kind of a direct interpretation that it's easy for anyone to think that doing something is easy, especially managing diabetes or hypertension. But if they're in your shoes, they would realize that there are no perfect days. Yeah.
Introduce us to this foundation, the Diabetes and Hypertension Management Foundation.
So I'll go back and share a bit of a story before I tell you about what we do. But we focus on, I would say, 3 key areas. That is creating awareness and also helping guys or people know how to prevent type 2 diabetes. We also focus on what I call management and treatment, and also lastly, advocacy. But maybe I'll take you back a little bit so that I give a bit of background information on where we are today. So in 2013, I lost my old man to diabetes-related complications, specifically what we call congestive heart failure. I was a young man then, and before even he passed on, he suffered quite a bit of complications. One was glaucoma after several, I would say, eye surgeries to remove what we call cataracts. And then also he had his left leg amputated. He developed what we call gangrene. And, my old man, I think, it was quite selfless and, like a pill of the family. So after, the burial and everything, I sat down and started to ask myself, how much do I really know about diabetes beyond what you learn in high school, the symptoms and all that. Then I realized that I didn't know much. And, upon reading and trying to dig, you realize that there's more to managing diabetes than, just taking medication. So I felt like, to honor the old man and the many things that he taught me, I created a page called Diabetes Management Resource Center. So, the idea was just read and interpret or rather share this in a language that people would understand. Because also, when I looked back, I realized that I also didn't know much. Fast forward 2020, the page had garnered 100,000 followers. And this was, consistently reading and posting about diabetes, sharing things that are practical in the country. And also, I'd also to sort of like also learn a bit more about diabetes and do courses for diabetes, become more or less like a diabetes educator from International Diabetes Federation. So we also created a page in a group sort of in 2017. It's called Kenya Diabetes and Hypertension Support Group on Facebook. Right now it has, I think, about 18,000 followers. It's a closed user page. So I realized that a lot of people were asking us questions, like what can I do about, this condition? Where can I get these strips? Where can I get insulin? And I had to go an extra mile, to find doctors or people who specialize in this condition. So then I realized that the inquiries were coming in quite a lot. So in 2020, I submitted an application to Mbele Nabiz, that I have this idea. I think it could help people because of the inquiries that we're having. So I was among the few people who were selected. I won a grant of $1 million bob. And with a bit of my savings, and I took a loan from a friend of mine of about $500,000, set up a pharmacy, and, with the help of a cousin of mine, who is also a farm tech. So, later on, we slowly, the pharmacy itself is called Diabetes Management Medical Center. Later on, we grew, and then I realized one thing, because we put people in a community, in a support group, a WhatsApp support group. Currently, our support group supports 2,300 people. We, before WhatsApp, increased the limit, we had so many people, so we had to manage about 5 different groups. So one group is dedicated to type 1 diabetes, and the other 4 groups are dedicated to type 2. So I kept realizing that, over time, we would sometimes have somebody who's hospitalized. They would want you to contribute for them. They would want you, to bail them. Some unfortunately, some people would pass on. So I felt like we needed something that is a bit more forward-thinking, that is a little bit more structured to be able to provide support to these people. So that is how the foundation was born, out of these support groups. And the foundation right now has 267 members. Now, to take you back about what we do, is that generally we champion a lot on awareness, and awareness to us is key. Is key in the sense that when we, as an offset, let me say, of the facility we have, we also do medical camps. So we realized that, out of the medical camps we do, and actually statistics are there. By the way, before I forget, November is World Diabetes Month. And on November 14th, we celebrate World Diabetes Day. And I'll give you a bit of a history of that day. So one of the things we champion is awareness. And in creating awareness, as I was saying, we noticed that from the camps, medical camps we do, we realize there are a good number, about 50% of the people we do screening on, what we call random blood sugar, and even blood pressure check. About 50% of them, to an extent actually, especially for hypertension, about 80% of them don't know that they are working with elevated blood pressures. So number one is to create awareness, and also in creating awareness, when we realize that some of these guys are in the space where maybe they would be pre-hypertensive or borderline diabetic, we're able to advise, tell them a couple of things that they need to do. The other thing that we do now in what I said we call management and treatment. Now the foundation at this particular moment focuses on three things. That is, helping out especially members who do not have, let's say, medical insurance through monthly contributions to be able to help them, offset some of these bills when and if they come up. Also, members would also give birth. We also celebrate such moments, and also, as I said, we, in fact, like for this month, we are running 4 kind of challenges. We are running challenges for people to share recipes, for I would call healthy diets. We also, social media posting, sharing their story, so that people would come out and understand that diabetes is with us and it's affecting a lot of people worldwide and even in Kenya. And finally, even on the part of advocacy, there are a couple of things that we want to do and we hope that we are going to do through the foundation. I would just mention, top of my head, a few things we have seen as observations. We see a lot of I would call fast food joints in different learning institutions, and we feel the proximity of such fast food joints would naturally lead to people consuming these foods, and if they are not active and all that, it would mean that it would predispose them to diabetes and hypertension. We funnily you actually see even fast food joints in hospitals. I don't want to go there right now, but generally advocacy as well, to even talk about what can the government do in helping the people who are already having diabetes. CT, I know, has done a bit of work on HIV, and I will tell you that HIV was quite successful in the not just the stigma, but even as we speak today, people receive free HIV treatment. But when we look at even the hospitalization of let's say these conditions, half of the people in different hospitals, whether it's public or private, is caused by diabetes. So what is the government? I read and see a lot of very nice policies on what the government wants to do, but in the real sense, there's nothing.
There's really nothing happening on the ground.
Yes, nothing happening on the ground. So those are the 3 areas.
You've talked a lot about diabetes.
Yeah.
From the reason and the motivation for you to start this journey was diabetes. I haven't heard you mention hypertension. So at what point did hypertension enter this room?
So again, diabetes, there's a high chance for anyone who is managing diabetes is that it tends to come with almost all the time. It tends to come with also hypertension as well. So that is why actually even the name of the foundation is diabetes and hypertension, because we realize that these 2 conditions come in quite often. And the other thing is that we see quite often, especially on the hypertension, is that it's unlike diabetes. When you have sort of like having diabetes, or even before, you would have all these signs and symptoms. But hypertension, you don't know. They call it a silent killer, because unless you get checked and all that, you wouldn't really know that you're hypertensive. So those 2 conditions, we realize they go hand in hand, and that's why, in fact, when you look at the approach we give, let's say even for the center or most what I would say the diabetes excellence centers, they would focus in a multidisciplinary kind of team. They are not just treating diabetes, but they are treating all these, whether it's hypertension, whether it's maybe eye complications, or checking your eyes, heart, and all that. Yeah.
Okay. So when we talk about diabetes, what exactly are we speaking of in terms of the condition? So folks to understand, when we're looking at now supporting communities, what illness are we referring to when we're talking about diabetes?
First, maybe we can go back and try to understand how do you get the diagnosis of diabetes.
Oh no, what is it first of all?
Yes. So diabetes generally means that you have elevated eye sugars, and the elevated eye sugars, I would say, is as a result of your pancreas, which is an organ in your body which produces insulin. So there are 2 types of diabetes. Let me just double back a little bit. So there's type 1 diabetes and there's type 2, but occasionally there's also what we call gestational diabetes. But the type 1 and type 2 are the common ones. So type 1 generally is an autoimmune condition. The cells in your pancreas that are responsible to produce insulin, they get attacked. I think the white blood cells go loco. They think that this is an enemy, so they attack the cells that are responsible for producing insulin. So when that happens, it means that your body doesn't produce insulin, and insulin is like the key. Whenever you eat, the metabolism has taken. Just a moment. It's an alarm. Okay.
It's a nice ringtone.
Yeah, it's an alarm. Someone. Yeah.
We got you up early today.
Yeah, man.
Normally wake up.
You normally wake up at this time.
No. This is a meeting. I was just telling my friends that I like your show so much that sometimes meetings come in between your show and work. Yeah. So to take you back to what we were having, the discussion.
Type 1.
Yes.
Autoimmune.
That means that your body cannot produce insulin. That means that the cells in your body cannot get the energy, because the food would need insulin to sort of like is the key to open the cells, or rather to allow the sugar to go into the cells,
to
absorb. Then the type 2 is also largely, and I'm saying this without the background of the education I have and the information. Type 2 is also more or less like insulin resistance, where yes, your pancreas is producing insulin, but for some reason it's not able to be signaled, or the signals there's a bit of insensitivity in terms of signaling your cells to
that this is insulin. Up.
Yes, open up. So it's largely caused by insulin resistance, and of course now the gestational one. So by and large, diabetes is a sugar problem, and the diagnosis of is done on 2 or 3 different ways. Where probably your doctor will tell you, yes, you have all these classical symptoms, whether it's excessive thirst, whether it's you probably going to the toilet too more, or maybe your wounds are not healing, or maybe blood vision, such. So they will tell you that let's do what we call a fasting blood sugar, and in the fasting blood sugar, which means probably you have not eaten for 8 hours, the doctor will go in. Once they check the sugars, if the sugar levels are above 7, then the diagnosis of diabetes is done. Then when we also have another test we call HbA1c, or glycated hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein, sort of tries to bind in with your sugars, and they stay on your body for about 3 months. So this test also, when the doctors do it and realize that it's beyond a level we call 6.5, then the diagnosis is done. Also now what I said, there's also what we call random. Randomly take your sugars, whether you've taken a meal or after 2 hours. If your sugars are above 11, then the diagnosis is done. So in essence, is high sugars is that your body is not able to, your insulin is either type 2.
So you're producing insulin, yes, but it's not being
or
absorbed.
Type 1 you don't. So you have to inject yourself all the time, like every day, because there is no cure for type 1.
There's no cure for type 1, but so then when looking at type 2, usually it's linked to lifestyle. So are we saying that there's a cure for type 2 diabetes? Or are we saying there's management for type 2 diabetes?
This is also an interesting question, and I will tell you a lot of what I've seen even within our groups. Type 2, there's what we call remission. Remission is what other people would refer as a reversal. I have seen it, especially in the early days or in the early years of the diagnosis. There are a couple of things you can do, especially in adjusting your lifestyle, that you'd be able to put it into remission. It means that you might not need to take your drugs. But in doing that, especially in the lifestyle part, and this is also where we've come in, and the group really, I would say, has supported people, because I would say there are a couple of things that will come in between you managing your condition properly and also maybe reversing it. So we would start maybe at a personal angle. Personally, how much do you know about the condition? How much do you know about the diet? Maybe what beliefs do you have? Because we have seen, a couple of people who would even believe that they would get, I don't know, some sort of medication, whether ni mitishamba, all those. So once we deal with the education part, we make sure that you understand and you have all this knowledge that you would require to make the right decisions. Then you are on the right path. Yes, you can be able to reverse, and of course, in doing so, there are three elements, especially in lifestyle. So lifestyle to us is diet, lifestyle to us is physical activity, and lifestyle is sleep. And sleep is the most important one, which is the most underrated, and I think most of us suffer from it. And I will just break them a little bit down, in detail. So diet. Diet also means that what are you eating? Because also predominantly, especially in our community, we know that unajua hata bei ya mahindi ikienda juu, so that's a big challenge. So when we look at diet, we're talking about diet that are food that is not very high in carbs. Is food that is nutritious, and in a nutshell, what we always advise, it's going back to our roots. It's the mrendas, it is the brown ugali. It's diet that it's traditional, not the fast food kind of diet. But also in diet as well, the other thing that we have seen that is key, especially in reversing the condition, or rather putting into remission, is also what time are you eating? So there's a belief that also if you're able to incorporate what other people would call intermittent fasting or timed eating, that helps a big deal. So exercise also plays a big role. The advice is that if you're able to do anything above 6,000 steps every day, that's also quite helpful. Up to 10,000 is what recommended. And also sleep.
Every day?
Yes. And also sleep at least 7 to 8 hours a night. It is. Those three need to be
7 to 8 hours of sleep.
Need to be synchronized.
Just sleeping for 7 hours. You're finding it difficult to imagine.
Tumekaa tu hivyo umelala.
Melala ukilala.
Yeah, that's important. Let's take a break at 8:30. Kenya's biggest conversation is hosting Duncun Motanya. He's the chairperson of the Diabetes and Hypertension Management Foundation. Today, we are talking about diabetes and hypertension and how the community should be aware of it and how we can support. Duncun
Spice,
chairperson of the Diabetes and Hypertension Management Foundation. So you've said diabetes is kisukari in Kiswahili. Hypertension, there's conflicting news. Pressure, kila mtu anaita pressure. Then there's to say it's msukumo wa damu. That's shinikizo la damu.
Sasa huyo ni Google amekwambia.
Yeah?
Google ndiye amesema hivyo.
Google anasema hivyo?
Shinikizo la damu, yes.
Bas. It's one of those. Okay. This foundation is basically a group that was formed by Duncun, and then other members joined. And their main aim so far is create awareness about diabetes and hypertension, support in management and treatment, and advocacy. Who are the members of your foundation?
Our members are drawn from the groups that we managed or that we have, the WhatsApp groups of about 2,300. But out of the 2,300, the membership is only 267. So these are the members. Majority of the members are in Nairobi, but we also allowed other members to join in. With the beauty is that technology has allowed us to do a lot. So through the membership, we, for example, have monthly contributions that go into the kitty to support all these activities. You have a platform that I think has been created by other wonderful Kenyans out there that are, you're able to enroll, and everyone is seeing, every contribution, every money that goes out is seen there. So the members are drawn out of the support groups we have.
Is it only people who are living with the conditions?
Yes, and also caregivers. We also allow caregivers, especially for kids with type 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about healthcare professionals?
We have healthcare professionals as well, even within our support groups. And the professions we have also now, we were lucky because all these things, including the facility we have, the medical center, is also run now by professionals like specialists, nutritionists. So they are also, by virtue of being at the facility, they're also members of the groups.
You know, there's something that you'd mentioned, and you talked about your own experience seeing your father going through diabetes and the complications of diabetes, and the impact that had on not just him, but his family as well. Not just you psychologically, but also financially as well. So tell us, what is this that you hear even from the other members? What does diabetes and what does hypertension, what do these two conditions do? What's the effect that they have on the community?
You know, one of the things that we have seen and continuously it's been researched on, you'd require about 7,000 bob on, lower side to effectively manage these two conditions, 7,000 a month. So you can imagine the financial toll that this has on families. The other thing is that most of the time, the people who are affected by this condition are breadwinners. It's either your mom, your dad, and especially when it's poorly controlled, it would mean that some complications would set in, and which would require that you have to probably be hospitalized most of the time. So there's time that you would lose where you were productive, and you're losing on that income. Whether it also potentially affects your work. The other challenge we have seen, even within the type 1 or type 2, even before the people who join our groups, they will tell you that especially type 1, they didn't know, that there was such a group, because diabetes can be quite a lonely condition to manage. So these support groups also, it's the platform kind of helps them to understand that it's a whole community. It's not just affecting them. Of course, we have also the other thing that we have seen, and we have also played a great role, is that we have helped the people and even their caregivers to understand how to relate with each other. We always used to kid that a lot of families out there have made because the families would act like policemen. So they have made we have diabetes criminals in families, because generally there's an understanding that you need to know how to relate with people, how to help them manage this condition better. So the financial toll is there, emotional toll is there. And a lot of it, I think, also for us is that when people realize that, I will tell you, so in one of our groups, we have got people like Eli, a gentleman called Eli Udhiambo from UK, and a couple of them have been with the condition for more than 45 years. So it also it gives you a kind of a new thinking that, wait a minute, I thought this was a death sentence. Kumbe it's not, because we've got people within this group who are doing things right. So in that way, it also inspires people to be able now to take more care of themselves and change their lifestyles and have a completely different perspective of what they probably used to have before knowing these platforms.
Does the organization have a platform where they talk to people about prevention, understanding that there are things you can do to limit your chances of actually being burdened with this disease?
Yes, and that is, I guess, one of the reasons that that gave birth to what we are today. Because you can imagine, City, from 2014 until to date, all our platforms speak about this condition all the time, and again we do screenings like as we are marking World Diabetes Month. We're also doing a lot of screenings throughout Nairobi and some other places.
When you say screening, what do you mean?
The screening, you said medical camp, let me put it that way, where you go out in public, you offer free screening, whether it's random blood sugar, hypertension. So what happens is that you would find there are people who you'd screen, and they would find they have elevated sugars. So you are able to give them advice that this is what you need to do. We have a team of nutritionists, clinicians, and a doctor. And also we hold our webinars that we invite our doctors to talk to people whom we invite again from our I would say very strong social media platforms, and also to speak about any questions that they would have, including the reversal part or the prevention part.
How expensive is it to manage diabetes as we're looking at today? Because one of the issues that we talk about is the cost. So looking at folks who are in a community whereby there's support that's being offered, then of course the resources are being shared in terms of where you can go, what you need to do to purchase. Is it expensive to manage diabetes, and what are we looking at then in the treatment of it, whether it's type 2 or whether it's type 1?
It's quite expensive to manage this condition, and I would actually say and ask the people watching or listening, to take preventive kind of, I would say, caution, or rather to have themselves screened, change their lifestyle, because it's very expensive. I'll tell you, even as we mark World Diabetes Day, 14th November, this month, 1921. Is when a gentleman called Frederick Banting and another gentleman called Charles, like you, they invented, quote unquote, insulin, and they passed the patent for insulin for $1. Because insulin was still is for common good, But now, when you look at the prices we have, including developed countries like the United States, where even the president had to pass an executive order, to bring down the costs for insulin, it's quite expensive. So you're looking at anything between 500 to 900 shillings for, let me say the most affordable insulin we call Mixtard. But when you now move to other types of insulins, because insulin is categorized into two types, fast acting and slow acting. So when you move to the fast acting types of insulins, they would go from anything between, and actually they've gone up right now, really up to around 1,900, 2,000. And you did these pens, like probably one pen would last you a week. So you're talking about 2,000 bob for 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite expensive.
Siti,
Yes.
when you were working with communities in addressing HIV,
Yes.
You've told us many times before that it was important for, first of all, people to understand the disease, not only those who are infected, but everybody else who's affected as well,
Yes.
to understand it.
The family members.
Family members, the community, to understand it and to know what it is.
Yes.
I'm hearing it's the same thing that Duncan is doing with his foundation, widening awareness about diabetes and hypertension. I mean, these conditions have been there. I mean, niko na sukari, unajua huyu anakuanga na sukari. Those people just say that and they pass it on and they just assume this person is managing it, or maybe they are not, or whatever they are doing, they are living with it. But there clearly is a gap in the level of understanding of what diabetes and hypertension is.
Well, yes, Eric. Thank you very much for bringing that up. You see, there were two people I worked with. One is called Dr. Jeremy Penna, another one was Dr. Reson Marima. Now, these are some of the most gung-ho, motivated people among people I've ever worked with. But then they had a boss called Professor Elizabeth Bukusi, who was similarly inclined. But being an older person, she was a little more restrained. These two went out of the way to try anything that would work. And we realized that it was not possible for you to tackle this matter of HIV if the entire family of the person who was positive, HIV positive, was not involved. You are not going to manage it, because the greatest enemy to the process of managing the disease was stigma. What people didn't know, the myths around it, the misconceptions around it, as opposed to the truth, because that was what was constantly fighting the truth about it. And involving family, meaning you bring the entire family, they all get tested. And here, entire family means even if you have more than one wife, you bring all of them. Yes, maybe at different times, but they all come. Now, it also meant that you also engage in your employment the community service. You see, this process that you hear the government talking about community involvement, community workers, and so forth, we insisted that the people who worked in the communities had to be HIV positive. There were some who weren't, but the vast majority had to be. And the reason was because when you have people propagating a message, ensuring that the narrative is understood and they're HIV positive, it is a lot easier. And if they come from that very community, it helps reduce this process of stigma. Now, why have I gone to town on this explanation? It's because that constant trying to figure a way in which you could reduce not just the incidences, the occurrences, and the new infections, but ensuring that people who are then infected could manage it without fear. Now, diabetes, but the HIV, if it wasn't for the interventions and for the treatment and care, it's also a very expensive disease to manage. ARVs are expensive. It just happens that they are donated and they're free, or they're supported, but they are extremely, prohibitively expensive. If diabetes and the management of it had a similar approach, then you would find that the support system, if you're talking about a diet, if your whole family knows, then it's not a problem, because they will know that there are certain things that you will not be predisposed towards eating. If they are not, they'll keep asking, but why don't you eat this? Or why don't you eat at this time? Why don't you? Now, that alone applies pressure. Now, something that you will also note is that when you have diabetes, the one thing you don't need is stress. You don't need pressure, as we call it. It was the same with HIV. And part of the reason was, to simply put it in layman terms, the advent of stress in your system reduces your immune system. Now, once it starts affecting your immune system, then the likelihood of you being sick or sicker is that much higher. So, yes, it was a process that one went through and one got to understand. And beyond the family, because families are members of communities, it was then easier to involve the community because, yes, families are involved because one of their members is HIV positive.
Yeah.
The people who form part of the community service are also HIV positive. So when they are talking or counseling, they have their medication with them. I mean, they will tell you, this is what I take and this is how I take it. Not this is what you should take and this is how it works. All I'm saying is, when you have people with diabetes, I myself am a diabetic. If you have people with diabetes talking about diabetes, then it's a lot easier because I'll be talking about my lived experience. I don't have to read a book. I'll just have to tell you, this is how it works. This is what I understand it to be. I, for instance, manage my diabetes with a diet. I'm not on insulin. I'm not on any medication. So it's a process and it's a decision that you have to make, and you have to determine, this is how I'm going to go about it.
And there's a case now for these support groups.
There is
platforms.
A huge case for it, because being sick, even if it isn't diabetes, is a problem. Let me be specific, mostly to men. Men usually need to be on their deathbed for them to go to hospital. Everything else, they will simply buy some over-the-counter medication to reduce the pain, to reduce the discomfort. But why the preventative aspect of any disease is important, and this screening that we're talking about, when you know early, you know what to do. Because there's a pre-diabetic stage. There can be signs that you might actually...
Where you're headed.
Yes. Now, once you know where you're headed, then you'll know how to divert it. But you need to be tested. You need to avail yourself. And the tests are not expensive.
CT, I have a question.
Please.
How do we get leaders to openly start talking about, this condition now as also a way of helping create awareness? Because we see it all the time. Chances are maybe at the point when someone is passing on is when you'd realize that, the condition that was associated was, diabetes. We have seen it, from, let's say, even the deputy president's brother, all these personalities, whether it's media or whether in politicians, because I think that would really play a great role in helping create awareness. But the question is, why and how can we change the narrative?
We still, in this 21st century, are a country where very many people do not believe that people just fall sick. There must be some elements, some forces, some people behind the sickness. So again, an admission of illness is considered to be a catastrophic admission. It's like, Hoya, Kwani, Stigma, as we recall it, plays a very, very key role in very many things. You're asking the question, how do we get people to be able to understand that being sick isn't a weakness? Being sick is not a sign of you having done some wrong that is following your family somewhere along the line. Being sick doesn't mean you're not able to do what you're. You see, there are many things that one needs to understand. So it's not something that is going to be achieved in a day. Like what you and the association that you work with are involved in, there's a lot of progress that has been made, but it wasn't done in a day.
Sure.
It's something that you keep at it now, because that's how life as a human being on this planet is. A lot of the things we do are repetitive. A lot of the things we do bring about change, but it's incrementally, it's slow, and it's hardly noticeable. One talks about the noticeable stage when a lot has taken place and you're seeing the eventual results.
One of the researchers mentioned that, especially in the government, in also doing more to screen, because you could even make it part of the process. Whether you're visiting the public health hospitals and all that. But one guy mentioned that the government is a bit hesitant, because they would screen, and of course they would realize that there are many people living with this condition. Then what happens?
They have to think of management.
Yes, exactly. And you must think of... You see, the thing is this, research science has indicated with great clarity, because if you're talking about even the deaths caused by diabetes in the developed world, the developed world has done a lot of work. The understanding about diabetes, it's out there, people know, okay? And what to do to be able to lower the chances and the likelihoods of it exists. How to prevent it, what to do exists. Point is, if we talk about just two things, lifestyle, diet, that's it. We're not talking medication. We're talking about things which are within the purview of most of us. What do you do with your lifestyle? What do you do with what you eat? Meaning, what do you eat? Now, as you correctly put it, most of the foods that we consider traditional foods, they were at the heart of the preventative activity you could take.
Very true.
Just traditional foods, what we call traditional foods. This brown porridge, this brown ugali, which you look at and you wonder whether it's also staring back at you.
It was part of it.
Yes. And then, remember, in a traditional living, your life was full of activity. You woke up in the morning, there was something you were doing physically.
Yeah.
Okay? You were always doing something physically. When you went to visit, you were walking. Here we sit the whole day, then I go to the gym. Then come back the following day, sit the whole day, go back to the gym. Okay? I eat a hamburger until it's coming out of my ears, and then I go to the gym. Now, you see, I'm simply saying most of what is needed is within our purview.
I couldn't agree more.
Yes.
That if you are able to adjust your lifestyle, all these things are possible to even, not get to the point that you have diabetes or you're diabetic, especially type 2. Yeah.
How does one join the foundation if they'd like to join this group?
We have a platform, DMRC Kenya, which is our platform that also, because one of the challenges we saw with the members, including people within our community, is that two things, because when you, of course, diabetic, you require medication almost all the time. So we created two platforms that would make it easy for people to consult with doctors and talk to specialists, talk to a nutritionist. So one platform is called teledoc.co.ke. Then we also have the DMRC platform, which is also a platform that you can use to join the foundation, and also at the same time, in case you need a refill of one of the let me say health products you want, whether it's anti-diabetic drugs, you're also able to order online, and we're able to deliver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Duncan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And yes, good work that you're doing there, and keep doing it, and especially in creating awareness and advocacy. Let's keep making make noise. Make noise, everybody. Make noise. Duncun Motanya is the chairperson of Diabetes and Hypertension Management Foundation. He's been our guest this Health Friday, talking about the role of diabetes community support platforms in Kenya. Keep it here for more in the next hour. It's 9 a.m.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.